Welcome back. We are continuing John. The first two chapters introduced Jesus. The next two chapters introduced his message, the gospel, the good news. Now we're going on to the conflict Jesus had with certain Jews. So we're going to read in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 17. And God willing, we won't have to do a part 2 on this area. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there was at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool, and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the trouble of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lie, and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he saith unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, saying, Sir, I have no man, when the water is troubled, to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed, and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said unto him that was cured, It is the Sabbath day. It is not lawful for thee to carry thy bed. He answered them, He that made me whole, the same said unto me, Take up thy bed, and walk. Then asked they him, What man is that which said unto thee, Take up thy bed, and walk? And he that was healed wist not who it was, for Jesus had conveyed himself away, a multitude being in that place. After Jesus findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. The man departed, and told the Jews that it was Jesus which made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus, and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, My Father worketh hitherto, and I work. Okay, so we have the setting, and we've got a feast. It doesn't say which feast. There are 3 feasts in the year that the Jews are commanded to come to. We had the Passover in chapter 2. This is where Jesus was revealed to the entire world, well, the world of the Bible. Everyone saw him drive out the money changers, and they saw him overturn the tables, and they saw him do all the miracles that we're told he did, but weren't told what they were. Okay, so now we have a second feast. The next feast that happens in the year is the Feast of Weeks. It is called that because you have the Passover, and then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so the Jews are down there for 8 days. During those 8 days, there's always a Saturday. And on that first Saturday, which is the Sabbath day, the next day they begin to count. They count 7 weeks for 49 days. And the 50th day, they're supposed to be back, which is always a Sunday. Well, yeah, because the Sunday counts as the first day. So it ends on a Sabbath day, being the 49th day, and it's always a Sunday when this happens. Well, this Feast of Weeks could be the Feast of First Fruits. It's also in the New Testament called the Day of Pentecost. Pentecost meaning 50 days. So now this feast, they were commanded to come back, and they were commanded to give an offering of the first fruits that came up out of the ground. Now, this pool had to have been a spring. There is no way that they're going to take effort to fill a pool that's surrounded by sick people, and sick people get in, because as soon as the sick person gets in, the water is considered unusable for anything else. And they're not going to wade through all those sick people to put water in. So this thing's self-fueling. It has its own water coming up out of the ground. It's a spring. Now this pool has an angel that comes down and stirs it. Now the word angel literally means messenger. Now it's a Greek word. It was not translated. Why? Because we don't have an English equivalent for a being that has no physical body. It only has a spiritual existence. Thus, when it's obviously talking about a spiritual being that you cannot see, these spiritual beings were meant to be messengers and workers of God. Now, the devil was one of these spiritual beings that rebelled against God, and a lot of the angels ended up going with the devil. We generally call them demons. Now, it's hard to tell what it is that was doing this, but they couldn't see it, so they called it an angel, and they believed it was from God. Because in their eyes, sin causes you to have problems. So anyone that's sick or has an infirmity, that means they can't do something, must have sinned. And this angel is offering forgiveness. But it's not to everybody. They had to have this race because every once in a while, they have to be watching this pool, and as soon as it stirs, they have a cripple race to get into the pool. And one of them gets healed. Now it gives them hope. I might get healed one day. But some of them never get healed because there's always more there. There's always new people coming. So now let's talk about this man. This man in verse 5 had been there for 38 years. Well, he'd been in the condition for 38 years. We don't know how long he'd been at the pool. It's very possible this family took him in and cared for him for a while. But then his family died, and he ended up out on the street, basically, and that's where he went to because there was hope there. Well, after 38 years, do you think he has much hope left? Well, we know from his response in verse 7, that is not a response of someone that says, yeah, I'm going to make it in that pool. It's like, I can't make it in the pool. I'm too slow. He obviously had something wrong with his feet, so he couldn't walk. Maybe even something wrong with his arms. It was hard for him to move himself, and he was very slow. And someone could always beat him into the pool. He's probably further back from the pool. He's probably just in there camping, not even paying attention to the pool when everyone else is. Now, isn't it interesting that there is nothing here of this person believing? Jesus just tells him, get up and walk, and he does. You see, a true healer heals by their own faith, not by the faith of the person they're healing. Jesus is a true healer, and he didn't require anything in this. This guy gets up and walks, and he obeys, and that causes trouble. Why? Because these Jews say it's not lawful. Well, it's not all the Jews. Please understand, he's probably walking through thousands of Jews before someone stops him. These Jews are called the Pharisees. They're the self-appointed police force to make sure everyone obeys the law. Well, there was a time that they were actually appointed for a reason, because Ezra appointed them way back, right 400 years prior to this, when they came back out of Babylon. And their job at that point in time was to go through Israel and to sort out who had married an unbeliever and who was married to the right person, so they could get rid of the unbelievers out of Israel. Well, their commission did not continue, but they did. And they added so many laws, and they added little ways for them to be allowed to break the law without anyone else being allowed to, so they could seem like they're the better people. It was all about the Pharisees being the best people and the ones that everyone respected and looked up to, all about holding power. Now, this man knew he was in trouble, because when the Pharisees are on you, these people kill anyone that goes against them. So he's trying to get his way out. I mean, he's just healed. He's got a new life now. This guy's 38 years old. That's older than the average man ever lives to get. So he says, it wasn't me. This guy came up and he healed me and he told me to do it. He's the one that made me do it. Because if a person can heal you, he forgave your sins. And if he did it on the Sabbath, he doesn't know what day of the week it is. He's just there all the time. He didn't know who it was, so they let him go. They're probably hoping that he'll figure it out, because that guy was still walking, carrying the bed on the Sabbath. So Jesus reveals himself. And this guy is given a choice. You're healed, now sin no more, lest something worse come. What is this worst thing that comes? Well, if you persecute God, that's pretty bad, isn't it? The one that healed you. And he does exactly that. He goes over to the Pharisees and says, I know who it was now. It was Jesus. He's probably thinking he's getting off, but that's probably when they put him to death, because now they have no more need of him. They know who did it. Now, we're not told they did that. And I might be wrong. He might have gotten off. His worst fate may have been when he came to the judgment in the afterlife. Now we have Jesus. In verse 6, he saw. It means to gaze upon. He looked on him earnestly for a long time. Now, it was probably not rare as people walked past this pool for them to stop and look in pity on all these people that were sick, that had body parts missing, things that didn't work. These weren't people that had a disease that could catch. These were people that had a broken bone that was never set. They had something wrong with them that made it so they couldn't walk, couldn't use their hands. They just couldn't work. And he knew the guy had been there a long time. He could see signs. But this is God. He knew it. And he asked Will, do you want to be healed? Now that man's response that we already talked about probably showed he wanted to, but he didn't have any hope. So Jesus gives him a command, saying, all right, that's fine, you're healed. Stand up, do the stuff. There's no conversation here, no why. It is possible that this happened and wasn't recorded, because you don't record the same thing again and again and again and again and again. We've already had it twice, right? It may have been given a third time, but probably not, because there's a group of people and they're still walking by as if nothing's happening. Because it's probably not very rare for people to stop and talk to him for a second. Now, Jesus was conveyed away. He conveyed himself away. When Jesus said, get up and walk, he didn't even wait for that guy to get up. He kind of melted back in the crowd and started walking away. As soon as he gave the command, he already knew the guy was going to do it. And he was not looking for being popular, being seen. Now, Jesus knew that it would get to the Pharisees. And Jesus is probably trying to call out the Pharisees and trying to show that they're not as good as they like to act. Now, when Jesus sought him, it ended up in his being persecuted. Now, persecuted normally just means to apply peer pressure to try to get someone to do things. This is something we see even in this country, a peer pressure for me to keep my religion in my house and not to tell anyone. Well, that's a peer pressure to disobey God. God commands us to tell people what he's done for us. Now, Jesus had a response. And we're all the way down to the end of what I read. And Jesus says, my Father worketh hitherto, and I work. Now, that's going to have to be a next time because it explains the dialogue that comes after this. But Jesus didn't just lay down and die. They're seeking to kill him. They go up to him. Their law says they have to give him a chance to speak for himself. He can point to someone else, rat someone else out so that he can deny it, and then let him off, or he can die. They only had one witness because he didn't make a scene. Everyone's still walking. He's gone before this guy ever stands up. The people probably thought that guy had managed to make it in the pool. So they probably didn't have any stir because that happened often enough. Now, we talked about the Jews, that they were Pharisees, that they were a police force. I was interested that in verse 12, they had biblical record to say if a person was gathering sticks on the Sabbath, they were to be stoned to death. And here, this guy is carrying a bed, which is approximately the same. So they have fairly good biblical grounds to stone this guy to death. But when he says, no, this guy healed me, he told me to do it, but they let the guy go. You can tell they're not really interested in upholding the law because there's nothing in the law that says you can't heal a person because they had permission to pull an ox out of a ditch to save his life. Healing a person is basically saving a life. So they wanted to kill Jesus just because Jesus wasn't obeying their laws. and he was capable of doing things that said he was from God. Let's talk next time and talk about the dialogue the two of them have together. Thank you.